if that suits you. And yeah, we'll just get started in a second. I didn't have thoughts about a lot of props today, but I feel like blankets are always a really nice idea. And having a couple blocks around couldn't hurt. And yesterday I took a class where she had me do something that I have never done before, which was to take the 2 blocks and come to lie down in Shavasana and just take them under the backs of your thighs to sort of change the tilt of your pelvis a little bit. So it's like kind of grazing that place where your butt meets the back of your leg. And you might get there and maybe it's like, oh, that doesn't feel right. But for me, it was like just the thing. And so just take a few moments and get settled into your Shavasana, this reclined pose, maybe with the blocks under the backs of your thighs. One of the reasons why this felt really, really good to me is recently I've become like a chronic butt clencher. Hey, Sandy. And so sometimes, yeah, I notice that my glutes are tight. So for now, just let your glutes be completely relaxed, in contact with the ground. And then let's bring our hands onto our lower belly and just let your lower belly be nice and soft here. And then just take notice of your lower back and your hips, fingers and toes. Spending a moment observing if you are clenching in any of these places. Good. Head, neck, and shoulders too. Let's get really, really soft. And as we move into this sunny day, it might be nice to bring a little bit of attention to the solar plexus, I think. And so right underneath your breastbone and right above your navel, this is a dense conglomeration of all sorts of tissue, fascia, nerves, blood vessels, digestive organs. So why don't we just give it a little scratch, kind of like we're scratching the belly of a receptive pet, your dog or your cat, but now yourself. Just a little bit of tummy scratching. Kind of a gentle waking up of that space. Another few big breaths here. Right, and then let's stretch those arms out past your head, take a big reach. And if you have the backs of your thighs on the blocks, think about kind of squeezing the glutes now and maybe lifting your back and your butt up and away from the floor. Good, rotate the wrists and the ankles. And just a couple more breaths here. And then let's begin to bring our elbows down alongside the body, and then the soles of the feet are going to come to the ground here. Okay, so just like we gave ourselves that little scratch on our solar plexus, Let's take our fingertips to our lower belly and rock our knees from side to side and just give ourselves that little bit of like a scratch or fingertips digging in here. And you can take the hands around in circles, you can keep the hands still and just move the lower body. Really, the choice is yours. Good, and then let's bring ourselves back into constructive rest. And we're going to take our hands together, the palms of our hands together, and just rub the hands together vigorously. And creating a little bit of warmth in between the hands if possible. And then let's take the heels of the hands up to the hairline and just drag the palms of your hands down your face. All the way down your face. Good, your fingertips finally graze your jaw. And then let's bring the hands back onto the belly. Take a couple of breaths. So this act of melting is this act of recognizing our own fluidity. Let's think about finding a couple of floating bridges here. And I want to think about maybe dragging the hands along the front of your body as you begin to lift up the glutes. Good, and then floating those arms out past your head. Once you get up there, you might rock a little bit from side to side if that feels right, but then eventually, we're just gonna bring those hands back down onto the torso, down into the belly, rub it along the front of the body as you settle the pelvis down. And then just repeat. So it's kind of like this front body massage, which is optional. On your way up to a bridge. And then the same thing on the way back down, letting your fingertips graze your body, maybe even that little bit of like a scratchy action. This waking up of yourself as you move in and out of your bridge pose. Breathe in the way that feels right to you right now. It might be like an inhale as you lift and an exhale as you lower. Or maybe it's the other way. And another few big breaths, strengthening the back of the body and opening the front of the body. Good, and then from here, we're gonna come on back down, constructive rest. Let's pause for a moment. Wonderful, and then your choice, we're either gonna take a figure four with your right ankle crossed over your knee, or maybe you wanna cross your right thigh over your left thigh. Okay, and then the choice is to keep that left foot grounded, or maybe to pull the thighs in towards your chest. And you might decide to rock around a little bit as you get there. Or maybe you just want to hold still. A few more breaths. Right, as you unwind the legs, connect the heels to the ground, slide those legs out long, and let's reach the arms out past the head. Big, big stretch here. Few deep breaths into the full length of your body. Right, and let's take a moment just to bring ourselves up into something maybe slightly strong. So you might just lift your head and shoulders off of the ground as you reach your fingertips towards those feet on the ground. Good. If you have decided to hang here in this stronger kind of shape, notice the middle of your back really pressing into the ground. And try to keep your jaw soft. A few more big breaths here and maybe a little sway in your upper body from side to side. Right, go ahead and set yourself back down. Let's bring the soles of the feet down to the ground again. We're going to move up into a bridge pose. And this time, let's kind of hold it here for 7 or 8 breaths or so. And feel free to slide one of your blocks under your pelvis if you would like to take a more relaxed version of this pose. And sometimes when I'm up in bridge, I like to kind of run my hands along the sides of my rib cage, and sides of my hips. Another handful of breaths here. And then let's go ahead and roll that spine back down to the ground. And then we'll cross the left ankle over the right knee or the left thigh on top of the right thigh for your sleeping shoelaces or figure 4. Good, that right foot can stay plugged in here. You might pull those thighs up towards the chest. And wherever you are, just notice your breathing. Maybe another 5 breaths or so here, a little rocking around might feel nice. For stillness if it suits you. Alrighty, let's unwind those legs, set the heels down on the ground, and extend those arms out past the head. Slide the legs out nice and long here. Full body stretch. Good, and then let's take the hands down to the belly and just sort of point and flex our feet quickly. So we're kind of rocking our body along the floor here. And notice the shoulder blades, the base of the skull. Good, belly moving, thighs moving. A gentle shake out on the ground here. Good, and then from here, let's go ahead and just bring the knees in towards the chest. And a block could come in handy here. You don't necessarily need to use one, but it might be nice to slide a block in between your knees, give it a little squeeze here. And then you can take your knees at like 90 degrees, so you might extend those feet up towards the ceiling. And we're just gonna rock the lower body from side to side. If you have that block, squeezing into the block, you can move really slowly here. Build a little bit of heat. Notice those belly muscles working, these muscles in the middle of your back really working here. Yeah, maybe just another 5 breaths or so worth of the side to side rocking. If you notice that you are tensing up your face, clenching your jaw, maybe stick out your tongue a little bit. Then a few more breaths. Awesome, and then we're gonna drop the knees over to the right. Good, maybe you're scooting your hips a little more towards the center or the left. And let's take our little recline twist here. And something easy going. And blocking between the knees, that suits you. Now just notice the left side of your rib cage. And just like we did before, you might give yourself like a little scratch there. Just a little something. Maybe not. Maybe you want to stretch your arms out nice and wide, and that's fine too. Let's give ourselves 7 or 8 breaths here. All right, and then let's bring ourselves back onto our back again, and just one more moment here in the middle. I think we're gonna send the feet up towards the ceiling. Maybe you want to rotate the ankles around a few times. Prepare our feet for a little bit of standing up, which eventually we will do at some point. Good. And you might decide as you're rolling those ankles around to lift your head and shoulders away from the ground. And maybe rotate your wrists and take some figure 8s with your hands. Maybe you take figure 8s with your hands and your feet, or not. Maybe you keep it simple today. Or maybe you want something sort of overcomplicated to grapple with. With another couple of breaths. And then eventually go ahead and set those feet back down. We're going to scoot the hips off to the right and drop the knees off to the left. Good. Hands onto the side of your rib cage, and maybe that gentle scratching action. As you settle in here and breathe, just notice what your eyes are doing, what your tongue is doing. And let your ears and scalp soften a little bit here. Okay, last couple of breaths. Maybe they're a little bit longer, a little bit slower. All right, and then we're going to roll over onto our left side and then over onto our belly. Yes, we will stand up eventually, but I don't know. I'm thinking a little bit of like extra time grounding today would be nice. As you get to your belly, shake your hips from side to side, like give them a good shake. Feel the tops of your thighs pressing into the ground. Feel the tops of your feet touching down. Notice your belly and your back. And then from here, let's bring the forehead down towards the mat, arms alongside the body. And we'll lift up into a locus pose. Good, and as you reach those arms back, maybe you're swaying that upper body from side to side a little bit. Good, maybe the feet lifted lower, one at a time, or both at the same time. And another 5 breaths or so-ish in a locust or something like it. Good, one more breath, pressing the solar plexus down into the ground. All right, and then we'll take our hands down to the mat. We're going to shift ourselves back into melting heart pose or puppy pose. So arms out nice and long. I like to cross ankles to here, one on top of the other, and then just drop your chest towards the ground. And as you settle in here and breathe, notice your underarms. Good, upper arms and elbows. And then notice your wrists and your hands. And just breathe. Good, and then let's make our way into a child's pose, maybe with your arms tucked around you or even underneath you. Curling up into a little ball here. Yeah, let's focus on breathing a little bit of movement into that middle back. Then into the back of your diaphragm. Good, into the space around your kidney. And how about another 5 breaths or so? Good. Let's take our hands and bring them palms down just in front of our knees. Then we'll turn our head so that the top of the head touches down to the ground. And we're going to come up into this rabbit sort of situation. So as you come up onto the top of your head, think about just gently maybe rolling around a tiny little bit up there. So placing very, very little weight into your neck. You're just going to see how it feels to have your head touching down onto something. And another breath or two. And then from here, let's just sit back on the heels, sit up nice and tall. We're going to take our hands behind us and interlace the fingers in our lower back. And your elbows can be bent here, or you might drag your hands down the tailbone, straighten out those arms a little bit, broaden the collarbone. And maybe even a gentle rock of your head side to side, or look up or look down, really slowly. Noticing how it feels in the neck and the upper back this morning. And while we're here, let's take a few lion's breaths. Since we're all in our own space, let's like really go for it. So let's breathe in through the nose, nice and slow and casual, like everything is normal. And then when we exhale, let's stick the tongue really far out, make a loud sound, maybe cross your eyes. Let's take 2 more. All right. And so from here, we're going to make our way into a tabletop. And as you find your tabletop, it might be nice to have that bit of padding underneath the knees. It's optional, but for me, it's always really nice, especially in this cold weather. Good. And then coming up to hands and knees, just start to move the spine around like a jump rope here. That feels okay with your back. And so dropping the belly down towards the ground and then picking it up and rounding over to the other side, dropping it back down. Good. If you're doing these jump rope belly things, do them in both directions. And if you're taking cats and cows, you might consider switching up your breath a little bit. So breathing in and out in the opposite part of the pose than you normally would. Good. Eventually, let's come back to neutral. And let's go ahead and tuck those toes underneath. And take your downward facing dog. And then as you find your downward dog, maybe think about bringing your feet about as wide as your space, your mat. Good. And then point your heels in and your toes out and take a big bend in the knees here. Good. So almost like you're coming into a squat, but then we're going to switch it back into that sort of wide down dog. And let's do this a few times, turning those heels in, pointing the toes out, kind of folding yourself in, bent knees. Good, and then legs lengthened, regular old down dog. One more if you want to. All right, let's start to walk those feet up towards those hands really, really slowly. One little step at a time. When you get there, again, feet are going to be nice and wide. Let's grab a hold of the elbows and just take a big old sway from side to side here. We'll spend about a minute doing this. Grab your elbows. You can soften your knees. You could rub your head as you go. And just let those arms swing. Whatever suits you. And another handful of breaths. Right, and then let's come back through to the center. Your feet are going to stay nice and wide for now. And let's think about really slowly, like slow as could be, coming up to standing. Dragging your fingertips up the front of your body. Good, moving that spine super slowly. Good, eventually we come to stand up. Yeah, in this mountain sort of pose. Good, and as you find your mountain pose, maybe this is a good opportunity to practice a tiny bit of rigidity. So think about really kind of like exaggerating that reach out with your fingers. Really press the soles of the feet into the ground. Engage those quadriceps. And nice and strong here and tall. And now let's just soften everything. Soften those knees. Your feet are still wide. Hands come out in front of you. Let's take that right hand underneath and the left hand on top. And then we're just going to take some circles with the arms. So as you breathe in, lift up that left arm. Watch your hand as that left arm comes all the way around. And it sort of scoops under that right hand. And then lift the right hand. Watch that one as it goes up and around, all the way around. So let's scoops under the left hand, and so on. We're going to keep this going for probably 2 minutes or so. And moving those arms, paying attention, feeling your feet, your breathing. Keep it going. The last few here. And if you find yourself distracted and sort of looking around the room, bring your attention back to the creases in the palms of your hands, those spaces in between your fingers and what you can see through them as you move your hands all around your peripersonal space here. Good. And then let's take our hands and just bring the palms together in front of us and move our hands around like we're holding onto a wall. Let's just take a moment with this. And then we're going to take our hands and place them on our belly and just give ourselves a little bit of a tummy rub side to side here. Okay, let's step our feet back and move about hip socket distance in chair pose. Good. And in this chair pose, see if you can keep some of that element of fluidity and playfulness. Okay, instead of this rigid, intense pose that we know so well. And maybe you reach one hand out and the other hand out. Maybe you're taking these twisty sorts of things, one hand forward and the other hand back. And while using the muscles of your lower body to hold you up and support you. Reminding them of their job, you know. And a big breath in here, arms reach up. Exhale, fold yourself forward. Drop the head down. Good. On your next breath out, step that left foot back behind you. And we're just going to drop that left knee down to the ground. Grab hold of your blocks. Let's place them on either side of that right foot. And now let's kind of sway a little bit side to side here and take notice of that left hip. If things feel a little intense there, a little fraught, it might be nice to tuck those left toes underneath and pick up the knee just to help support your hip joint. But maybe it feels really good, who knows? So just take a moment here in your lowish lunge. And it might be nice to walk those hands back, lift the upper body. Good. And then maybe that left hand reaches up and you take a tiny side body stretch, pressing that right hand down into a block alongside your right hand. Good. From here, we're going to sweep ourselves back into a runner stretch. Chest drops down over that right thigh. Maybe there's even a little swish of your hips from side to side here. Just observe how the back of that right leg feels. And another breath or two. And then we're going to walk those hands forward again to the top of the mat. Let's tuck the left toes underneath. And then let's rock ourselves forward into the standing balance of sorts. Good. So hands on two blocks. And a few options here. You could open and close that hip, stacking the left hip on top of the right. And then sort of squeezing your inner thighs back towards each other while supported by the blocks. You might take it up into a half moon if you like that. But noticing that right hip, how it feels here this morning. And a few more breaths. Good. And then let's walk those blocks back a little bit. Frame the right foot. We're going to step the left foot back. And I think like a warrior one might be nice here. Good. So we'll bend that right knee. And at first take your hands to your hips. And just give them a little pressure, a little massage. Arms reach up. Maybe for a moment there's that bit of rigidity, that bit of strength in the arms. Then eventually just go ahead and softly drop those elbows down one little bit at a time. Good. From here, the hands can come back behind you. Turn the palms towards each other. And you might interlace those fingers and lift the heart. Yeah, humble warrior. Head to the inside of your right foot. If lifting those fingers up feels good, go for it. You might also drop your hands down to the ground. Good, but keep your legs strong here. Just a few more breaths in your humble warrior. Strong, strong legs and soft upper body. Good, and then from here, we're gonna straighten out that right leg and take your blocks. We're gonna walk around into this wide angle with a halfway lift. Good, feeling that length through your spine. Good, and maybe folding forward sounds nice to you here. Maybe the head comes down, or stay in that halfway lift if it suits you. And then if you drop down, or if you're halfway lifted, it could be really nice to move the upper body from side to side. Eventually, we'll lift ourselves back up halfway if you've folded. And let's turn the heels in and point the toes out. And we'll deeply bend those knees and come into this sort of wide squat with your hips about the same level as your knees, maybe a little higher. Good. And then from here, crawl your hands up onto your knees, find your goddess pose perhaps. Okay, just a few moments of this, and yeah, some fluidity might be nice here. Swinging your low body side to side, rolling your shoulders around. And maybe your hands massage the knees a touch. And then let's straighten out those legs. And we'll turn the right toes towards the top of the mat, back foot's in an angle, and we'll fold into a triangle. So the right hand down onto the knee, a shin or a block, and then that left hand might reach up here. Few big breaths. All right, let's take our hands back down to the top of the mat, frame that right foot. Good, drop that left knee, and then send the right knee back to meet the left. And you can sit back on your heels if you want to. You can find child's pose if you want to. If you want to flow through a vinyasa, that's also a thought, maybe coming back to your down dog, etc. And your plank. Whatever you're doing, just make sure that you are here. You're here with yourself. Noticing the coming and the going of your breath. Sense the space in front of you. And then to the right side. And then sense the space behind you. And then to your left side. And then let's just take our hands and place them on our solar plexus. And notice that. If you're not in your down dog. That would be hard in a down dog. Few more breaths. And then from here, we're going to make our way back into a downward facing dog again. And as you find that downward dog, just drop the head way down, give it a small wobble. And notice those spaces in between your fingers. Good. And then from here, that slow walk up to the top. As slow as you can go. Good. And once you get there, feet are going to be a little bit wide. Drop the upper body down again. I think you can release your fingers behind your back. It's a thought. Now, if the shoulders are not a fan of reaching your fingertips, or sorry, your knuckles up, you might rest them on your lower back for now. Grab a hold of your elbows. And then slowly, we're going to come to stand up. Sliding the hands up the fronts of the legs again. The hands come to the hips. And before we circle the arms around, this time we're going to take some figure eights with the hips. So send one of your hip points forward and then around. And then the other one moves forward and around. Good. Looking for a little bit of fluidity around your pelvis, the lower back, and the lower belly. And in your hip socket. Guess what? Your shoulders too. Maybe your shoulders move with your hips. A little bit of time like this. And then we'll go the other direction. And in the other direction, you might also notice your shoulders kind of following suit. Maybe going in the other direction feels like, huh? What just happened there? If that has happened to you, that's totally normal. Happens a lot to me. Your brain just needs a moment to kind of catch up. So keep on trying. And just a few more breaths. The reverse direction. And go ahead and just come back through to the center. Let's step our feet back into hip socket distance and sit down in your chair pose. Good. So it's nice and strong. We all know that. But maybe there's some way it can become a little less intense. Maybe you pretend that out and overhead you're holding onto a steering wheel and you're sort of like steering the bus this way and then that way. And stretch for the sides of the body. Maybe you want to hug around yourself instead of doing all kinds of work. And just breathe into the upper back, the back of the neck. Just a few more breaths. And go ahead and fold yourself forward, drop the head down. Right, and we're gonna step that right foot all the way to the back of the mat. Drop that left or right knee down. Yeah. And I'm gonna do my darndest to remember this whole thing. I'm pretty sure I do. And so find this low lunge. And notice if it's good as a low lunge or if you want to tuck those back toes underneath and lift the knee. And maybe a little sway in the upper body. Just a little something to feel into that right hip. Good, and then from here you might walk those blocks up a little bit towards closer to your hips. And you might even look up. And then the block is going to be down on your left. Reach your right arm up. And maybe take that tiny little side body stretch. Maybe it's your right hand sitting on your left ear, the left side of your face. Good. And then eventually we're going to come on out of this and shift ourselves back into a runner stretch. That left leg nice and long. And maybe the chest moves in towards that left thigh. Yeah, and you might kind of switch the hips a little bit side to side here. And notice how the back of the left leg feels. And how the sole of the foot feels. Another handful of breath. And then let's rebend that left knee. We're going to walk our hands forward and lift up that right leg. Just come into this kind of standing leg lift thing where we'll open and close that right hip. So kind of drawing the inner thighs towards each other and squeezing. And then stacking that right hip on top of the left. The right hand might lift up towards the ceiling. Find a half moon pose. And then set back down. Maybe you just want to hold on to a half moon, and that's also nice. We'll just take a few breaths here. And set that right hand down. We're going to step the right foot towards the back of the mat. And set yourself up in warrior one leg. Good. Feet on two different tracks. That left hip kind of reaches towards the top of the mat. Arms reach up. Nice and strong here just for a moment. And just to remind yourself, maybe you're looking up for a breath or two. And then as slow as you can go, begin to drop those elbows down. And as you drop those elbows down, eventually the hands come down. Palms turn in towards each other. Yeah, maybe the hands meet behind you, interlace those fingers, and puff up that chest. And then we'll find our way into Humble Warrior. Head towards the inside of that left foot. Yeah, knuckles could be high, hands could come down. But keep those legs nice and strong. A few more deep breaths here. All right, and then let's grab a hold of those blocks. We're going to walk ourselves around into this wide angle with a halfway lift. Or maybe it's a folding wide angle. That's also kind of nice. Good, and if you are folding forward, maybe take your hands onto your lower back. Give your lower back a little bit of that scratchy action or a little bit of a rub. I'm such a fan of the scratching recently, not because of dry skin or anything, but just because it's invigorating. That sort of wakes you up. One more breath or so. Right, and then grab a hold of your blocks, halfway lift. We'll turn those heels in, point the toes out, and settle the hips down into this kind of wide squat, this goddess pose. And then crawl your hands on up. And then from here, we're going to drop one shoulder in towards the middle and press that hand into the thigh. And then we'll drop the other shoulder in towards the middle, pressing that same hand into the same thigh. Keeping that moving side to side here, just for a couple breaths. And eventually, let's stand up nice and tall. Point the left toes towards the top of the mat and the right toes towards the side. And then we'll slide this into triangle. The left hand touches down onto your knee or your shin or a block. Right hand reaches high. Few more breaths. Now let's take that right hand back down to the ground. Let's step the left foot forward. And one more moment in a forward fold, which might be a little bit more intense. Maybe you're grabbing hold of the backs of your calves. Maybe you're stepping on your hands. Maybe you're softening your knees a whole lot here. Look at this simple act of just kind of folding in. And from here, let's find our seat. As you find your seat, take one moment here just to do a thing. It might be grabbing a hold of your shins or your knees and sitting up tall, kind of squeezing in here. One thought. Another nice thought is a butterfly pose or a bound angle, folding forward. Or really a forward fold of your choosing. The legs could be long, out in front of you or wide. Just take about a minute or so to fold in. And then it's time for your final pose. So just getting there your favorite way. You want to lie down in Shavasana or constructive rest. You want to curl up on your side. You want to find a patch of sun somewhere in the room and curl up like a cat. You can just take a couple of moments to get yourself nice and comfortable. Settled in. Blanket on top of you or around you. Breathing your breath. And I just wanted to read a poem by David White this morning that it always feels really good to read this one personally. Really nice reminder. It's what to remember when waking. In that first hardly noticed moment in which you wake, coming back to this life from the other, more secret, movable, and frighteningly honest world where everything began, there is a small opening into the new day that closes the moment you begin your plans. What you can plan is too small for you to live. What you can live wholeheartedly will make plans enough for the vitality hidden in your sleep. To become human is to become visible while carrying what is hidden as a gift to others. To remember the other world in this world is to live in your true inheritance. You are not a troubled guest on this earth. You are not an accident amidst other accidents. You were invited from another and greater night than the one from which you just emerged. Now, looking through the slanting light of the morning window towards the mountain presence of everything that can be, what urgency calls you to your one love? What shape waits in the seed of you to grow and spread its branches against a future sky? Is it waiting in the fertile sea, in the trees beyond the house, in the life you can imagine for yourself, in the open and lovely white page on the writing desk? So just let your breath get a little bit more slow, perhaps. Or maybe it sounds a little bit louder or different than it did the last couple of minutes. Taking a moment just to make any kind of movements that your body is asking for, depending on where you are. Eventually, we're going to sit up, but take your time. You're already there. Yeah, let's close our practice. Right, so let's take our hands and just give them a nice little rub together, a little reminder of that warmth. Faces, hi. Maybe we all look at each other as we're rubbing our hands together and creating that warmth, and imagine sending that warmth out to everybody else. And then we'll set our hands down on our heart and return it to ourselves. Get a big breath in to lift the heart up into those warm, warm hands. And then let's exhale and drop the head down to honor your practice and to honor each other too. Thanks everybody for coming this morning.